local group, and they want to issue badges. It's perfectly okay for, let's say, a local astronomy group to go ahead and start to issue badges because they have these values that they would like to see represented. So the other thing that's fantastic about badges that are, I think, currently is addressing issues that are currently unrecognized is that they address both hard and soft skills. So this is an opportunity for people to start to introduce recognition within the environment where, let's say you're a good community member or you're a great peer mentor. Now you can get a badge for that, depending on what the issuer decides to focus on, where their values lie. The other thing that it allows is the sense of peer assessment. So while we're kind of right now working in kind of a top-down traditional academic mode where there is an expert that is awarding badges, it's also possible to have badges kind of come upward or work on the same level. So peers can assess one another. And this is something you actually hear quite a bit when it comes to open badges, is the concept of lifelong learning. And I haven't mentioned this, but we actually are funded through the Mozilla Foundation. And they're very interested in the whole concept of lifelong learning. And the word stackable there is also a great term that gets used quite a bit within the world outside of academic world, but it's stackable credentials so that you can earn different credentials that kind of stack together so that you can actually create a kind of higher level or meta level of badges or credentials. Same idea, just now it's a digital representation of that.
We call that a transcript.
Yeah. So yes, a transcript. So badges. What about the degrees and certificates, right? What about diplomas? Do they have value within the system? Absolutely, absolutely. For us, it's not a question of either or, it's really a question of both and. We say, like, yes, these two things can work together. They don't necessarily have to compete with one another. They can compete with one another. They don't have to. They can work within the environment. It's possible to have teachers both give grades and also introduce badges, or have the peers within the class issue each other badges. So it can be a really interactive system. Okay, so essentially this sounds great. How do we get there? Mozilla, this is where Mozilla comes into play. We want to develop a shared badge ecosystem, and we're also focused very heavily on the infrastructure, which is a universal standard. And so when I talked a little bit earlier about the sense of Foursquare badges, we're trying to make sure that everybody, when they click on a badge, can understand that there are the same prompts within that badge, that they're always going to see what is the content associated with that badge. It's not going to be a siloed badge. It's not going to live just all by itself within one organization, but it instead can be a universal system. And let me also just take a brief moment to explain how badges work. Badges are essentially digital representations. This is always my badge. Digital representations, that is a badge. Digital representations that are, as I said, skills, competencies, achievements, associations, and they're graphic representations, they're PNGs. And when you click on them, you actually get taken to a page. It's actually an actual link. You get taken to a page that explains to you why the badge exists. So that earlier, Steve talked a little bit about metadata. Yes, there is metadata embedded within that badge. And the metadata actually explains who the issuer is, who the recipient is, why the badge exists, so what we call the criteria URL, what does somebody need to do in order to receive that badge. And then there are also optional aspects. So let's say the evidence URL, that's our term, the evidence URL, which is essentially all the work that someone did in order to earn that badge. And I mean individual, so that if I was a badge earner, when you clicked on that badge and then you clicked on the evidence URL for that badge, it would be all the work that I did. So it might be for the biliteracy, it might be the tests I did, or it might be the essays I wrote. And so it actually is it's not a proxy anymore, it's actually a direct link to evidence. There we go, open badge infrastructure. So this is kind of just a nice little graphic that helps to explain how the whole system works. So there are badge issuers, and they can be a variety of different sources. So Mozilla has not defined a taxonomy of badges whatsoever. We're actually looking to issuers to define that. So all of your badge systems out there will actually be work that you have created and have decided where the values are that you want to see recognized. So a variety of different issuers here. We can see that there might be an after-school program, a free online course, and a government agency. And they all issue badges. And this is Gladys. This is someone off of our website. And Gladys has earned a badge. And she's earned these series of badges, but this is where we hit the privacy point. Because one of the primary tenets of Mozilla is the sense of personal agency and personal ownership of your data, you actually, when it comes to a badge that gets issued through the Mozilla OBI infrastructure and it goes through the reference implementation of the Mozilla hosted badge backpack, sorry, there's a lot of words. The reference implementation, which is essentially our example of the badge backpack, and that's where the badges get aggregated. You actually have the option of selecting or of accepting or denying the badge, saying like, I don't want the badge. At this point, when someone issues it to you, you can say, no thanks, I don't want the badge. And that doesn't go anywhere. If you do say, yes, I want that badge, then you actually, it moves into your badge backpack, but it still remains private. No one can see it until the earner makes the conscious decision to push it and make it public. So privacy is a significant consideration for the Mozilla hosted badge backpack. So here you can actually see this is the, well, I should say earner, not learner, but because we feel like all badges are earned and they're not necessarily representations of learning, sometimes they're affiliations and other things like that. And then they can push that. So Gladys has taken that, she's pushed it into her badge backpack. She's accepted those badges. And then from there, she can make that's where she can make the conscious decision about where to display her badges. And she gets to decide every single time. She doesn't necessarily make one badge public and then public everywhere. She can say, oh, you know what, I want to display this on my personal website, but that's the only place I want to display that badge. And then I'm on LinkedIn, but I want to display a whole bunch of badges there. And then I have a WordPress site or I have a Tumblr site, and I want to display some badges there, but each one of these areas can actually be separately decided upon. And then also, kind of one of the primary goals of open badges is to move people toward jobs, essentially. So that the badges are representations of all these skills, so that people can actually put them somewhere, have them get recognized, so that will lead them along different pathways.
Are the badges certified?
Certified. Certification. Yep. So no, they're not certified. That is a great question. So because we're very early on in the ecosystem, and it's a great question, don't be sorry. We're very early on in the ecosystem, and we anticipate that there might be certifying bodies out there that will essentially certify certain badges. It does give me to bring me to the opportunity to talk about endorsers. And endorsers are organizations who may not necessarily issue badges themselves, but they may want to vet badges, or they want to look at other badges and scaffold off of them. So the example I like to use is, let's say that there's that local group that has an astronomy badge. And NASA makes the decision that they don't want to necessarily issue astronomy badges, but they want to issue astrophysics badges instead. So they go out and they look at all the badges, and they decide that that local group astronomy badge is actually pretty awesome. And they want to assign to that as well. So they want to endorse that badge. All of a sudden, that badge has a lot more currency, social currency. And then instead of NASA having to build their own astronomy badges, they can scaffold off of it. And they can say, okay, this is a prerequisite badge for us. And then we're going to say, like, yes, the astrophysics badge, you actually had to have done this first. Or then it may be that they do that for a few variety of issuers. So, and then getting to this question of certification too, whether or not there are bodies right now who might, so for example, ACT is an organization that is very interested in the question of certification. And that is something that they may come online and they may decide that that's a viable option for them to go ahead and look at a whole bunch of badge systems and then start to issue ACT kind of endorsed badges so that ultimately it will get built into the system, but right now it's not something that Mozilla has built in per se. A lot of this is anticipating that the ecosystem will come into being, right? So in some ways we're seeding it. We're saying like, okay, we've given you the tool in the same way that the Learning Registry works. It's a tool. And then how it gets implemented is still kind of up to the entire general public and those, not only issuers, but also the earners and displayers as well.
But we should be clear, MacArthur Foundation